spoke to was absolutely blown away, not only by you as a human, but how you're calling humans to this next level.
When I'm seeing people in the clinic, it's been really interesting the last few years, the shift in our biology. The body was responding to these shifts and changes that are happening. Our bodies know when we hear and feel truth.
Mhm.
You can see that the biology is trying to evolve and it's happening rapidly in some cases. And I can see the shift that happens. And I've helped thousands of people detox their bodies. I believe we're going to have opportunities to free ourselves more. We have to move from freedom. If we're coming from a place and frequency of freedom, it changes everything.
What if what feels like breaking down is actually your biology trying to evolve? What if the old world is breaking open so a new human can break through? That's what today's conversation is all about. My guest is Dr. Kevin Preston. He's the founder of the iconic New Human events. Kevin has 15 years in clinical practice. He's a doctor of Chinese medicine, and he's worked with people from all over the world who come to him looking for the answers other doctors can't crack. In my mind, his whole approach comes down to one idea. The body holds a deep intelligence, and healing is unlocking the potential already in our DNA. Our biology is changing. We are quite literally evolving. Most of us are fighting this upgrade. What I really loved about what Kevin had to say is the idea that we're not breaking down. We're waking up. We're remembering how to tap the ancient technology we've carried all along. In the age of AI, the most powerful technology actually isn't the machine, it's us. We are the technology. This is the time we remember the great truth about who we really are and the greatness we're capable of as individuals and also as a species. This is the heart of ThriveEvolution. Evolution is the revolution. And a big part of the revolution is this: we come back together in real life, in person. It's radical in an age of screens and Zoom calls. So I invite you to lean in because this is what Kevin is building with New Human. And that's why ThriveCast exists, to help you find the others. That's why he's here. So lean in. It's time to thrive. Dr. Kevin Preston, welcome to ThriveCast.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to dive in with you.
So we go way back. We go way back as neighbors without even knowing it, which is pretty crazy. We go way back to even being born in the same city in Alberta, which when I think about it and I think about the synchronicities that you and I have, I've come to be really humbled by the extraordinary alignments. And we both have a lot of similar passions. And one of the passions that you and I have is this business of change and transformation we find ourselves in. You have blown it out of the water. Last year, I was really honored and privileged to attend your New Human event here, literally 15 minutes down the road from me. And people from all over the world came to that event. And everyone I spoke to was absolutely blown away, not only by you as a human, but what you're doing, what you're curating, and how you're calling humans to this next level, the new human, as you call it. And we had 3 epic days. You curated all of these extraordinary vendors on top of the actual event itself. Dr. Richard Rudd was there, Dr. Zach Bush, several other absolutely extraordinary healers, teachers, guides, luminaries, visionaries. And you're doing it again this year. So I'd like to really dive in, as you do, to this concept of the evolution of humanity, of the individual human, and then the human collective as a whole, as we find ourselves in what we could term a collapse of the way it's been, the way we've been doing things. And you're seeing this in your clinic. So not only are you running these amazing events, but you're a clinician, you're a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. And I myself have been fortunate to experience your healing prowess. And now I understand why so many people from all over the world seek you out, including CEOs, change makers, a lot of business owners, musicians, high performers. And they're coming to you often at the end of the line. You're bringing them not only possibility and hope, but you're actually bringing them genuine transformation. So with all of that said, Dr. Kevin Preston, I would love for you in your own words to share as we embark on this conversation, what you're seeing in your office, what you're seeing in people about this precipice. And as a evolutionary leader of our time, how are we making this transition? How are we doing? Are we doing okay? Are we going to be all right?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it depends on the day. And thanks for sharing all those layers. And, thanks for joining us at the New Human as well. And I guess what I feel really fortunate with is because I'm still in practice and I'm doing bigger events and, smaller retreats and different things. I like really creating that deep connection because I do believe it's presence and connection that makes the biggest impact. And I don't think there's ever going to be any alternatives outside of the in-person connection that gives that level of energy exchange and authenticity, and where we get to look at each other and hug each other, and that there's nothing in between. And it leads to more rapid healing, it leads to transformation. And so because I get to see the one-to-one in the clinic, and then in bigger groups, and also observing humanity, where are we at? That is a great question. I feel like we are on the precipice of change. There's a lot of chaos, and you could have all the different metaphors of that we're in the birth canal of humanity, or we're in the primordial goo, so to speak, and about to emerge as butterflies, hopefully. And there's so much energy moving through, and so when I'm seeing people in the clinic, it's been really interesting the last few years, the shift in our biology. And so I would say the biology of our species is changing, and it can look pretty subtle at times. But when we look at the collective of the population, there's a lot changing in medicine and health in general. And there's a lot of inflammation. That inflammation, I think, is signaling the need for change, the need for going about things differently and coming back to remembering of what's true in the body, because the body can't lie. Our bodies are so divinely orchestrated and created, and there's such a level of intelligence in there that just observing, even in the one-to-one visits in the clinic, a lot of people are going through a lot of detox, I would say. And the biology, I think, because of the genetic codes are shifting on this planet, seemingly the energy waves are coming in, it's changing all of us in ways that we probably don't even know. But from a toxicity point of view, I think things that have been held in the collective of, both humanity in general and each of us as individuals, it can't stay in the same way anymore. Because if we're shifting in our frequencies, old patterns, old toxins, things that have even been in the ancestry, in the data bank of our bodies, the physical body is actually starting to bring that up to the surface to clear it and to push it out and to integrate it in a different way. Because I think some of these things we can't stay in the same frame of mind anymore. We can't stay in the same even biology, I think. And so it's been an interesting time looking at it from that lens and asking a lot of these questions of what's happening. But seeing thousands of people, especially the last few years, you can see that the biology is trying to evolve as well. And it's happening rapidly in some cases. And, it can bring up a lot for people, but we're in a great change, no doubt.
Yeah, I have moments where with my own experience, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster and my cheeks are flapping and, I've got my arms up in the air and it's like, whee, there's without a shadow of a doubt an extraordinary transformation happening on every level. But biologically, what you're witnessing is fascinating to me. You're actually able to witness this transformation in real time in your clinic. I don't think we can underestimate what an extraordinary practitioner you are, what an extraordinary doctor of Chinese medicine you are. I don't want to roll over this, incredible opportunity to edify you, because I've been to a lot of people over the years. I pride myself on being that girl that everyone can call when they're like, "Who do I go to?" And Jay, I need help with this, and I'm always referring people. I know this guy, or I know this girl, and people know me as that. And I would love to refer people to you, but you've got a wait list the size of Kentucky. Not that I'm sure, you don't find other ways through your adventure retreats and through your events for people to access the wisdom and knowledge that you hold. So you're still very accessible in that way. But you've got a wait list the size of Kentucky because of your incredible ability you're diagnostically on point. Like
Right.
what you were able to do for me in my health was able to unearth issues that I had going back as far as a ruptured appendix in Thailand, where I almost died. And it was exposed to tons of toxins that got trapped in my body. But diagnostically, I've been to a lot of people, and I've never had anyone be able to unearth what you were able to unearth. And the shift in my health to allow me to go from good to great to next level, to have myself set free to that next level of health available to me, it was a blind spot in not only me, but every single other practitioner that I've been to. So I'd
Yeah.
love for you to speak into this piece in many ways, the ability to help people heal. And you're clearly a very gifted human to do that, both individually and collectively through your group events.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful, and your reflections. And again, it fills my heart that this is what I get to do. It seems like an honor and a privilege to dive in really deeply with people. And again, whether it's one to one or in bigger events and things, is that we're all human. We all have things that we've been through. We've all had experiences that sometimes have been incredibly challenging. And when we look at the biology in that way from a real grounded, like still point, I think that's probably given me an advantage, and also needing to do lots of healing work for me, because I can only help people insofar as I've, cultivated these capacities within my system. And the interesting thing about going deep with somebody is you have to become really present. And I think that's something that's really overlooked in medicine in general. And, through no fault of lots of practitioners, perhaps, and busy, and the systems we have are maybe not sustainable in that way, that I'm often choosing to take time because I want to slow down for me. Because when I drop into that still point, the availability of information and data that we can dive into is way more than what it would be in 2 minutes or 5 minutes of how do you get to that kind of depth. If you want to dig a deep well, it's going to take some time. And I think there's no skipping that when we want to get to the real details. And the other thing that I've seen in medicine in general is the idea that things in the past, even biologically, old infections, old wounds, mentally, emotionally, but also physically, that if it was a certain distance in the past, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that the current day symptoms or issues that people are having wouldn't have anything to do with that. It's too long ago. But I have actually found that's the opposite, that those things that we experience as infants, as children, as early teens, whatever it might be, as young adults, the infections, the, toxin exposure, whatever it might be, that can accumulate and that can definitely impact the tissue. And I think it's often being missed. People are not looking that far in the past. And I've had many, many patients where they've sought out other practitioners and they've told them, oh, no, that was, 4 or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It couldn't be that. And then when I get them in my chair and we start diving in and I ask them about certain circumstances, those were powerful and impactful and challenging. And sometimes they leave a mark. And some of these things will hang around the body. And also, it's opened my eyes, and just treating people for lots of years now, that the ancestral things that get passed forward should be considered in terms of the access of the body to that freedom and health that you're speaking of, that we're often carrying things that we have no idea about. And if that never really gets illuminated, we're leaving a lot of potential on the table. We're leaving a lot there that could be addressed and then shifted, and people find themselves feeling 10 years younger and more health and vitality and clarity and mental clarity that then allows them to go and impact the world. And I love working with entrepreneurs and leaders, partly, that reason, that they're going to impact others in beautiful ways. And so I've seen a lot of healers and practitioners, because they need somewhere to go too, who's holding, that level of depth for them so that they can come into their full capacity of service as well. So it's never a dull moment. It's always exciting. I never know what I'm going to help somebody uncover. But I've also seen that when we talk in this way and when we drop in and, you start building coherence in either a big or small setting, that the person themselves is able to locate some of these things that they know inherently cause the disturbance and they know needs to be addressed. And so I've often found if I just listen long enough in that space, people will tell me what they think it was, and they're often right. And yeah, sometimes we've forgotten or we're not sure what's happening in the body, but there's so much wisdom inside when we slow down and listen. It can be like deeply powerful, and then miracles happen and really cool things follow that.
It's almost like you just get out of the way for the person to discover what's innately inside of them. I mean, we all I believe we have the capacity to heal ourselves, but in working with someone like yourself or another human, we have the ability to amplify it and to work and heal together. I'm sure that you've experienced it as you work with humans or even individuals or collectively, that what you're experiencing, you're also growing and healing at the same time.
Always. Yeah, I get
Right.
to learn something with every single patient. I get to learn something, and I get transformed with each event that I'm leading, often ahead of time. You know, by the time I'm on stage or we're at that space where we're going to dive in like that, many things have, come up in my own system that then I need to address, heal, integrate, embody so that I can actually inhabit that type of frequency and then, invite people into that space as well, usually because I've been through it myself.
Mhm,
Yeah, I think it's
1000%.
the
Y
leadership.
You're creating these containers of extraordinary impact, and I've heard you speak before into this concept of sustainable impact, because what you're seeing so much is you've got these people out there, "Yes, let's build these things. Let's, w be entrepreneurial. Let's go and, build, innovate," and the hustle culture that we're coming from has burnt the majority of these people out. You've shared in the past that what you're seeing in general is a human that is very depleted, a human that is, playing the game, but not the long game. And that as a result, they've got adrenal fatigue, they've got, all sorts of issues where they're literally being, let's see, how do I say this? Stealing from their future.
Mhm.
And because they're stealing from their future and this is encouraged by our culture, they can't actually make the impact long term that they want to make. So I'm super curious for you to speak into this culture that you are set to change, that you're passionate to help people to see that in order to evolve as humans and to be, impactful as leaders and entrepreneurs and these CEOs you treat, how we shift mentally and emotionally to being able to take care of the vehicle, the biological vehicle, that
Mhm.
so often is missed in people's evolutionary journey.
Yeah, the bypassing of the physical body is pretty huge actually in different communities and the way that we think, even on a spiritual perspective. And I think in a really big way that's been overlooked for all kinds of reasons, but we can't forget that we're still in this physical vehicle, that the body needs nourishment and needs minerals and needs all these aspects to be able to thrive and function really well. And what I've seen with the body and even in nature, nothing's free. So if we start skipping a lot of steps within the biology, we're going to have to pay for that later. And so what we see sometimes in the biohacking communities, and I'm all for modern technology and breakthroughs and seeing, where can we create more health. But just recently, if you look at statistical data, we've actually kind of peaked in terms of longevity of years lived. And now it's going the other way. Yet we have more access to technology and information and data than we've ever had at any time on the planet. So I find that really interesting that there's starting to become an inverse relationship with that. And these are the questions that I like asking is what is happening there? What is it that we're trying to front load in our systems that you're going to have to pay for later in some way? And so this is also what I've seen in the clinic is either where there's not a lot of neglect in people's systems that they haven't really been listening to the body, they haven't really been attuning to what their body is speaking and how it's communicating with them because symptoms are communication. It's data from your system to tell you, hey, there might be something to look at here. So when that gets overridden for years and years and years, that energy has to go somewhere. And I think that's how we're selling ourselves short a little bit, both on our potential, but then where you're going to maybe pay a price later on if you've been skipping a lot of the cues and a lot of the communication through the body. And this is, I think, where we find ourselves collectively right now. I was just looking at some of these stats over the last couple of years that I think now in the US, 6 out of 10 people have some kind of chronic illness and that's doubled kind of in the last 6 7 years roughly, which is pretty alarming. So we know there's something happening. How we navigate that and what we look at is I think we have to slow down a little bit and breathe and really start asking the body, what are you telling us individually and collectively, because we are part of nature. Nature has so much wisdom that gets overlooked that, when
Mm.
you're in the forest and you look at the trees and the insects and the bees and the birds, they're all orchestrating in a beautiful dynamic balance that is inherently, part of creation in whatever way you look at it. And our frontal lobes, our minds, I think, try and bypass that in some way that we think we know better. But the body and our biology, it can't lie. And it is communicating louder and louder that shifts are needed. And I also think in the mix there is part of that rapid evolution that we're in, that our biology is trying to shift and change into a new layer, into a higher frequency that may open up, further gifts. You see it, people talking about telepathy more and the energetics and how we can communicate. And I think that's available to a lot more of us than maybe what we've been taught.
Mm. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to see the acceleration and how fast the change is upon us. And of course, we can't talk about change without talking about AI. We have to talk about AI, right?
Yes.
I'm so curious to hear from your perspective, this synthetic this synthetic force, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better word right now. I mean, we're the organic force. We've spoken before about the human technology. My belief is that the human biology is the most extraordinary technology in the universe. We're so untapped. There's so little that we have really explored and understood about how magnificent the human being, the human organism, the human technology is. And right
Mhm.
now, as far as I can tell, we're shifting from Survive OS into Thrive OS. We're being given the opportunity to upgrade. And AI is providing this evolutionary tension because it is, in many ways, people are feeling that it's overshadowing human intelligence. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people missing the opportunity of how we can perceive what's going on. So I would love to see how you're perceiving it and how you see this. Is the sky falling, or do we have an opportunity at hand?
I think there's always opportunity. And if we look at it that way, then it is that way.
Mm.
And almost like anything else, different tools that come along in some ways, if you think of even when the vehicle was invented, that was a pretty monumental shift going from horses and buggies to driving around. What a big, shift in events of what was capable or what we were capable of. And that was
Mhm.
through the human mind too. And so I think with AI currently anyway, all of the things that it's reflecting and giving back to us is an accumulated nature of our own intelligence, of our own minds, because all the data is from us. You know, it's not like AI went and mined all the data from all these other universes and then, is giving us a bunch of new information. It's giving us back the information that we already have. It's just doing it in a rapid way, and its ability to organize and curate massive amounts of input is pretty phenomenal. And so, like any tool, it can be used in a number of different ways. And I wouldn't even venture to say what the prediction is going to be of where we're going to go. But I think there's opportunity for all of it. It depends what we choose.
Yeah.
And I think it does come down to the individual, because like the micro reflected in the macro, every single person, when one person heals, it affects the people around them. It affects their kids or their community or places that they work. So any technological breakthrough that could impact all of us, and then our individual choices are going to be really, really important. And there's probably going to be, if we talk about human design or gene keys, a lot of these prophecies around the forking of the species, where there might be some divergent paths that a lot of people are going one way and a lot of people are going the other way. And there might be quite a bit of hybrid models in between there where people have found, hey, I can use these tools really beautifully to enhance my life and my ability to actually spend more time connecting. And then we may see the opposite happening because we're also in this hyper connected world. But the amount of loneliness or isolation that a lot of people feel, along with massive technology, there's an inverse relationship there too. So I think it still comes down to the human psyche of what are we wanting to choose. And with infinite choice available and infinite computing power and technology and even AGI at some point, how are we going to navigate what it means to be human? And I think this is a question that a lot of people are now asking that they weren't even considering before because they didn't have to consider it. And now these things are sort of confronting in some ways. And I'm really curious because I see what's happening in the biology. And so most of my lens is through the human technology, it's through the organ function, it's through, wow, there's big shifts happening. And our biology is requiring a lot of nourishment right now to evolve quickly. And I think that's where a lot of symptoms or illnesses popping up is people are not nourishing themselves to keep up with this amount of rapid change in evolution. And AI might be able to assist that. It may
Mm.
not. It may lead us down a road that we can't return from. And currently, I'm doing a lot of learning around AI because I like understanding things. It's just the nature of my brain. I like to understand. That's always how I've looked at the body. How does the body work? How's the cells work? Like what really creates illness and what does wellness sprout from? And so I'm now turning my attention to look at AI to see what is this going to create in terms of health and wellness? And probably like anything else, it's going to create all of it. All of it will be available, both the good, bad, and the ugly, depending on what somebody chooses of how they want to interface. Much
Oof.
like even before AI was available,
Mhm.
people were already creating illnesses and wellness based on their choices.
Mhm.
So I think it's going to amplify our decisions and our choices in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The amplification is real. So biology, your witnessing of biology, can you dive in a little bit on what you mean by seeing this shift in biology? You talking
Yeah.
about, like, contrast that through the sort of
Mhm.
the poisoning that we're experiencing in our food and in our systems, or you talking about something you're actually witnessing at another level?
There's a few layers here. So when our biological systems come under strain, come under force, under pressure through toxic exposure, which is seemingly the highest it's ever been on the planet. If you look at chemicals, plastics, air, food, water, all of it, we're
Mhm,
being bombarded, really clearly. And that's not even really up for debate anymore. That's not even my opinion. Like that just is what's happening.
mhm,
Our biological response is going to be really interesting over the long term. When we think of playing the long game, if we just take literally short bites of, time sections, you may see a variety of different things that don't show you the whole picture. So in the short term, what's happening now, huge inflammatory issues in the population. Like a lot of people are dealing with chronic inflammation through the gut, through the body, through the nervous system, anxiety, panic attacks, brain fog, chronic fatigue, really huge, huge issues, really going through massive amounts of the population. And it's not even in the elderly population anymore. It's younger and younger and younger. And we've seen that over the last few decades that there's chronic inflammatory conditions in, teenagers, in, young adults, and even in kids that didn't exist before. So if we look at that data, we know something's happening. We know things are accumulating and it's, creating an interesting expression. The response of the biology is always interesting though, because I think life wants to always live. It has a beautiful divine design to be able to do that. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here now. So I am really curious about the pendulum swing the other way of that organic and inorganic expression through our genetics of kind of a forced evolution. What is that going to bring in terms of gifts? And, the author of Gene Keys, Richard Rudd, always talks about that every shadow contains a gift. So if we see all the shadow frequency of massive illness and huge issues in medicine in general, I believe our biology, given enough time and resources, is going to have quite a powerful response to that. That's going to reveal higher level gifting. And we may not like how that shows up, but if we're going to go through some of these challenges, we might as well experience the gift side of it too. And I think our a lot of our kids, and I see this with patients too. I'm having a lot more conversations about the extra intuitive abilities that are showing up for people. It's like the
yeah,
veil's getting a little bit more thin. Like we're starting to attune to
mhm,
each other more than maybe what was available before. There's a
mm,
little bit less separation there if we're willing to slow down and listen to that. So people connecting with animals and plants more and listening to the natural world is helping them connect with themselves more. And then when they call a friend and the friend's like, I was just thinking about you, how much that's happening now,
mhm,
but in bigger and bigger ways that I think we're able to tap into our inner technology way faster, way deeper, and in new ways that maybe we haven't experienced collectively yet. Because I'm seeing little windows of that showing up in individual patients and working with kids that are quite gifted. And they're able to share and speak to things that maybe I hadn't even figured out until I was like 30 years old, and they're 7 and they're dropping these amazing elements of wisdom that they see a bigger picture because they're on that beautiful leading edge of something that's quite miraculous and breaking through. So I believe there's always a response in that balance of energy. And I'm excited about what that looks like. Not to say we're not going to hit some significant challenges, and then we're going to be forced to innovate. And that'll be the power of the human vessel to see what else we're going to create.
Man, so good. Kevin, you're nailing it, my friend. You're nailing it. I'm just like almost on the verge of tears. It's so potent what you're saying. This fork in the road, when you spoke of that, I got a huge shiver up my spine. Like I mean, like my whole body just went electric. It was like, woo. Okay, so what's that? What are we talking about here? Let's get real.
Well, again, maybe it comes down to choice, and we could get into the philosophical debate of do we have free will? You know, that's like a whole other rabbit hole. And in my current belief, in my current expression, I believe that we're far more connected than what we think. And if we return to a remembering of we're all one and that unity consciousness, I think that's where we tap into something much, much greater. And so that might be the choice point of the forking of the species, is people choosing to come back into oneness or move forward into oneness and understand that unity consciousness. If I harm you, I'm harming myself.
Yeah.
If I harm the planet, I'm harming myself.
Mhm.
And to really bring these concepts forward in a more tangible way. And I think a lot of this is going to have faster ramifications and more quickly energy returns to source, you know? So anything we're putting out, even in our thoughts and our minds, that returns back to the body pretty quickly. And it returns, you know, through loved ones and through people. And it's not always in the way that we're going to think. And so I've had experiences definitely the past few years where it seemed like my experience of a space in a moment in the same room with a bunch of other people that were maybe having a completely different experience, that gave me a tangible example when I had been wondering is what is this going to look like? There's going to be a new framework and a new society kind of rising in the midst of the old systems that are crumbling, or at least that seems like was what's happening right now if you look around. But I could be standing in one spot in a grocery store and somebody could be standing right beside me, and I could be in that moment in joy and openness and feeling quite liberated and excited. And they might be having an experience of tremendous fear, tremendous terror, and hugely shut down, but we're inhabiting the same space at the same time. And so I think that might be what it looks like, is not necessarily we go into some other dimension, but in this reality on the earth with our feet on the ground, our experiences individually might be opposite of somebody standing right next to us. And I've always been fascinated by how does that show up like that? How could it be so different? Same, you know, space and time. And then also on the health front, if I'm at a certain frequency, maybe somebody's at a completely different frequency right next to me, and the person next to them is in their own reality in that way too. And that frequency kind of dictating what their experience is, and also the health of their biology and the health of their system. So I do think it has really like tangible connections to if we're thriving or not. And how do we feel on that internal environment day to day? What is the default mechanism there? You know, what's the emotional home we return to? I've heard, you know, Tony Robbins say in the past is, you know, where's somebody's set point? And so I think the set point of humanity is going to be changing.
Yeah, it already is changing, no doubt. It's really coming in strongly for me to talk about new human. Just keeps like coming in. It's like new human. This is our Changemaker Spotlight. At ThriveEvolution, we champion the people that we believe in, the ones making real impact. When we put our name behind something, it's Thrive approved. And Kevin is exactly that. He's created New Human, an immersive 3-day gathering that brings together visionary leaders, holistic practitioners, heart-led entrepreneurs, and creative changemakers. It's all about coming back into connection with ourselves, with one another, and with the living world around us. And it has to be in person. There's a human harmonic and energetic acceleration that happens in a room full of people that you just can't get through a screen. Dr. Zach Bush spoke last year and called it one of two of the most powerful places he's ever been on planet Earth. Last year, Interstellar. This year, Reunion, October 2nd to 4th, and it's in the Okanagan of British Columbia, Canada. The links with a special code for our community are in the description. I'd really love to see you there.
Human beings have a curious habit. When powerful energy moves through life, we assume something is wrong. Yet fire simply burns, and a horse runs because it is alive. The difficulty begins when we forget that the same power moves through us. So we resist it and feel somehow apart from the very life we're part of. When you become still, something changes. The fire becomes clarity. The movement finds its rhythm, and you begin to sense that life moving through the world is the same life moving through you. That is reunion. Join us in person at this epic 3-day event. Tickets are available now.
It's like the ultimate upgrade, right? We're the bridge right now. Our generation is really the bridge between the world that we've known for a long time, relatively speaking, to the exponential change that we're experiencing in the next 5 to 10 years. Our kids will grow up in an entirely different world than what we've grown up in. And we'll actually be the ones that can remember and say, when I went to high school, there was no cell phones, and now you look at this accelerated technological shift that we're in, coming to terms with it being human centric, I think is such an important thing to do. And this is why I loved your new human event. And what I also loved about it, and I'm just gonna be really straight up with it, is that it got a little gritty. Like Dr. Zach Bush, who's like your brother from another mother, the environment that you set up for genuine transformation by going into some of that shadow so that the light can be revealed. As you mentioned, Richard Rudd speaking about this juxtaposition between the shadow and the light. And so often we don't want to look at the stuff. The Epstein files are a really good example. I mean, that stuff's been going on for a long time. That information has been available to understand the distortion that we find in our world. And yet now it's right in everyone's faces. And people are having to really look at that distortion externally, but also internally. It's so horrific to imagine that this is the planet we live on, and at scale. It's not like a couple of randos, here and there, at far-reaching corners of the earth. These are government officials. These are, people that we've looked up to and admired and trusted in the spiritual community. People are just getting absolutely rocked to their core right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put this into words, what I'm wanting you to share with us, other than like, what's your perspective on this like ultimate soul rocking the shadow? And I know you are doing that work at New Human with people. We can get deeper into it, but I really would love to hear your perspective on that.
I think the grit is important. And with what we created last year, and for everybody that was there, Zach said this, that he's never gone that deep with any group before. And I think it's because we created the conditions, the circumstances, and the energetic container in the vessel to be able to do that. Was it deeply uncomfortable at times and challenging? Yes. Do I think that's required in some of these spaces to really make an impact and create huge shifts in our biology and the way that we see the world? Also, yes. It can't just be all the light all the time. If we can't traverse some of those dark territories, we're going to continue to bypass and move beyond it, both individually in our bodies and collectively. And then that same pattern just keeps going. So if we don't shine a light into some of those places, even if it's uncomfortable, nothing really shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for love and light and beautiful experiences and softness and kindness. It's not to be harsh because I don't think that's required. But truth is, I think, what your body was responding to of the goosebumps of these shifts and changes that are happening. Our bodies know when we hear and feel truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so to traverse some of that terrain, I'm not necessarily here to solve discomfort because I also see the beauty in it. And I can see the shift that happens. And I've helped thousands of people detox their bodies. And yeah, they often go through some times where they're feeling fatigued and their mind's not good or a bit headachy, and all these things are moving through their organ systems because they're liberating themselves of all this toxicity that has already been in their system. We're just bringing it to the surface for it to be transformed, integrated, and cleared. And then on the other side of that, they feel completely different as a human. And so I think this is the shift that we're seeing with everything coming to light, disclosure wise, and it's rampant and it's so vast. It is hard to take in. It's how do you digest that?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's under the surface and then is visible, again, then we can start to address it. If everything remains hidden, it's pretty hard to create some of those deeper shifts in a big way. And I think that's why it's coming up, because we don't need just little shifts. We need pretty full on society shifts in these big systems. And I also think we're moving away from like the age of the guru. I don't want to be a guru. I feel like I'm just like anybody else. And there's some things I've learned and I've had some experiences, and I feel really called to try and share that and create spaces where transformations can happen. And if I can bring value into a space, that's beautiful, but it's just something that's coming through me. And then when we're all in that oneness connection, nobody's more or less special in that, but then we can actually all heal collectively in a huge wave where it's not just one person trying to create a shift, or oh, that person's going to save us, or some of these like victim kind of perpetrator savior triangle
Totally.
system. I think we're moving away from that beautifully. That you have immense gifting, I have immense gifting, my daughter does, my friends do, and it's like, yeah, let's share that. We have a unique blueprint that we're all here for a purpose. I think we all are here right now for some massive change, and a lot of the people talking about this. It's like, yeah, some pretty big waves right now. So how do we prepare ourselves? Staying grounded. I think for one, remembering to breathe and connect with the land and this beautiful planet that we're on, to not get sucked into like too many rabbit holes, because then we are reacting and we are in the fear. To
Mm-hmm.
not shy away from it, but if we can learn to be with our discomfort more, I think that's a superpower. And that's something that I can speak from experience. I was the world's biggest avoider of conflict, change,
Oh, yeah.
difficulty. I didn't like how it felt because I feel so much. But once I came to terms with that and I could start moving into those spaces, facing some fears within my own body, within my own mind, and coming out a little bit, just like working out at the gym, building that muscle, then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, we could take on a huge amount of discomfort and be okay. And that's usually where that magic happens, or those huge breakthroughs happen, is when we're riding that edge a little bit and then we shoot through to something much greater. So I think collectively we're in that right now. And it's intense, for sure.
Yeah, it's very intense. The need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable is like a present now always state. It's like, because the butterfly, the cocoon, the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, it's like the chick inside the egg. It doesn't become strong unless it fights against its need to break out of its shell. And that's how I see what's happening right now. We've grown up in a society, for better or worse, that has chosen comfort and has chosen pleasure, and at almost all costs has avoided pain. And even in childbirth, I've done it 3 times now, and I can tell you that that gift that comes at the end is certainly earned. It wouldn't be the same, I can guarantee, if it wasn't a passage, if it wasn't an initiation. And in my mind and heart, humanity's getting an extraordinary initiation at the moment, next level initiation. When I was at the New Human event, and yourself and Dr. Zach Bush took us through some of the experience of the transformation. At one point, my spleen, like I could feel my actual spleen pumping and pulsing. Like there was an actual physical response to the energetic transformation and the mental shift. And what I found is it's one thing to grow on your own and to, do the work on your own, which I think at some level, certainly anyone watching this conversation is there with us. They're like, yeah, let's go. We are the builders. We're the architects and the innovators and the one going, we don't really know how to do this, but we're up for it. Let's go. And building this new era takes such an incredible amount of humility.
Hmm.
Both you and Zach came to that event with such humility as comrades and allies with everybody in that room. You're like, we're all in this together. And you weren't in front of us in any way. And never did I feel that. I felt like you were right beside all of us, like holding arms with all of us. Like, let's all cross this bridge together. And it's not going to be easy, but we're going to do it. And we're going to have the courage to take one step and then another step. And nobody really knows what it looks like because, quite honestly, I think we don't even know what's coming or what we're capable of. I think it's going to be so incredible that even the next 5 years, what we
Yeah.
experience in our own personal journeys, but to then do, as you said, to come into community, to come into a container where you're doing it with other people. I'd love to hear that transition and where that came from, your desire to host these events.
I think generally speaking, a lot of healers and guides that have come before me and people that I've learned from and, mentors and things like that, our greatest wounding is often our greatest blessing. And our greatest challenge is often maybe the greatest gifts that can show up. And so I have often been a person who has felt really alone. And being alone and lonely may be two different things, but I felt
Mhm.
lonely. I felt disconnected from myself and others. Even in a room of 1,000 people, I couldn't access that connectivity. I couldn't access that within myself. I was isolated even in my own being. And, there's all kinds of stories and different things. I think we all have different stories of childhood and growing up and also in society that I know that's not just a me thing. All the wounds and the shadow frequencies are often collective. And so that was one as part of my story of how I felt when, without blaming anybody, that was just my experience. But I think I was gifted that opportunity and that experience to really feel that at a core level, and how terrifying that can be and how isolating and scary that can be, to then slowly do a lot of deep healing work over the years and being able to treat thousands of people. That helped bridge that connection of helping people connect with themselves. And then I got to connect deeper within myself too. And then I noticed when I was in groups and seeing what would happen for people in breakthroughs through another person, through that hug or just that shared understanding without words, even, it started to shift people's bodies and their illnesses started going away and their physical body would start shifting and changing and their eyes would come back alive again. You see that, like, that shen, that spirit through the eyes. And it really inspired me and excited me because I could feel it for myself, but then I could see it within other people. And I thought, oh, if we could get one more person to be able to feel that way and crack open and break through in that way and not feel as alone or isolated, that brings us into a greater sense of health collectively. And then what if we created more spaces like that? And so really seeing the breakthroughs, and I'm often in the back after getting off stage or whatever, and I'm watching and I'm seeing the interactions between people. And sometimes I'm back there with a tear rolling down my face of seeing other people connect at such a deep level that they're supporting each other. Maybe I built the space and, orchestrated a lot to do it, but it's not just because I'm there, it's because we're all there, just like you said.
Mhm.
And then that support sort of ripples through that whole space in that whole room and, through the communities, because everybody going back to their spouses or their friends or their kids after the event as a change and as a new human, that wave keeps going. And then I could see that really reaching, far beyond just out here in Armstrong or Enderby, of having a big ripple effect. And even if it's one more person, and beautifully, I get messages and emails and notes and people sharing more, because obviously I can't talk to everybody in an event like that. That there's so many stories and the tapestry weaving together that I can feel it. I may not know exactly what's happening with each individual person of their breakthroughs unless they send me a message and they tell me, which is so profound, but it keeps going. And then people become friends and people are getting together and doing businesses, and maybe they're guiding and leading now, and we're sparked through that inspiration of us coming together. But that can't be that can't be replaced, that feeling beside one another when they're being open and vulnerable. And I think this is the courage that it can be scary moving from a place of isolation and feeling lonely into community, into connection. There's often a resistance there because it's maybe new or it's foreign and they don't really know, or how am I going to feel? And what if I cry? And how many people were taught to never cry, especially in front of people? But then they find themselves after a day or two and they're transformed because they finally allowed themselves to be seen and felt by the person next to them, often even a stranger. But then there's that shared experience that is, it's life changing because it's like it plants a seed, or it allows a frequency to be unlocked in the body. It allows us to remember. I think this is a lot of our ancestry. If we go back far enough, we were in communities like this and we did support each other,
Mhm.
not for a gain or a benefit, but just because that is what you would do in a loving frequency. Of course, you would
Mhm.
support each other
Mhm.
and you wouldn't judge them either. You would allow that to come up and you'd allow the feelings to be there. And when you see one person do that, it allows us to do that. And so I've often found I needed to go first for, you know, oh, I Kev's got to feel his feelings. But when I do, it moves a massive amount of energy. And then other people start to feel that permission or that frequency that, ripples through the population. And suddenly we
Mhm.
find ourselves in a different space where we're all feeling again. And
Mhm.
that, I think, is what's going to create huge change.
It's being given the space and in a way the permission to say, okay, we're going to take this time, whether it's in our privacy of our own homes to take 10 minutes even. In this case with the New Human event, taking 3 days to go, I'm going to actually just be with this. I'm going to allow myself to peel the layers of the onion and to allow things to move in my system that are causing it to become blocked,
Mhm.
that are deactivating the ability to have our vital life force flowing cleanly. And with to me I think of rivers, the body, like it's all of these little rivers and streams. And in Chinese medicine, whenever I go and I get acupuncture, it's always been so profound for me the way that the body's intelligence, given a little bit of just encouragement, how those channels open back up again. And I feel like the New Human event is like that. It's like all these estuaries and all these people sort of, and as each one pops like popcorn, everyone starts popping like popcorn. It always felt like that at one point at the event. And what I loved about what I experienced personally, but then also as a witness at the event, is that the community brings us all home to ourselves ultimately, but because we're able to be present. And for me, things moved that I'm a meditator. I spend lots of time in nature. I am very present with myself, I think, considering I have 3 kids and a business and all the stuff. But what it afforded me was the ability to be so present in the collective, feeling what we're all going through together and to not feel that aloneness. And the impact was really profound for me. We all have moments where it's not loneliness, it's feeling alone because the world is so overwhelming, and it's where we're putting our attention right now because of, these things right here, which can be, I think they're neutral. The technology's neutral, in and of itself. But because it's new to us, we haven't, it's like we're toddlers or we're teenagers at best, learning how to experience the technology so that we use it and it doesn't use us. And our attention has been so hijacked, especially with the kids. And I think this is a huge topic. You have teenagers, I have teenagers. We're living in a culture where we've got this seeming weapon at this point, that is hijacking attention, hijacking awareness, and the inability for most teenagers now to be able to stay present, let alone adults, right? Because the teens and the kids are mirroring and following in, the adults. And if people have these things like this all the time and the kids are seeing that, that modeling, but yet
Mhm.
we're living in a technological age. And so this transition into using the technologies that doesn't use us is a big conversation we're having at ThriveCast and in ThriveEvolution, which is, the business of change behind ThriveCast. Is how are you speaking to your kids about this now? We can't have a conversation about all of this without bringing the kids into the conversation. They're growing up in a world, for the most part, that says, hey, it's okay to continue to always look outside of yourself. And where are the systems being set up for kids? And hopefully, fingers crossed, you've got something that you're brewing up for kids coming in the near future. Seed
I
planted.
Yeah. Well, and that seed's been growing for some time, I think, just inspired by obviously having my own kids. And I just feel like one of the richest human beings. My two kids are so amazing and beautiful and intuitive and clear and healthy. And it's like, oh wow, what a blessing. And also they've challenged me to grow and become more embodied and more aligned within my own energy because, this saying's been around for 1,000 years probably. They don't do what we say, they do what we do. And so if I'm on my phone and using technology, not in a neutral way and in an unhealthy way that's extractive and not supportive to what I'm actually here to create and do and live with health and vitality, then of course they're going to mirror that and away they go. And so I think one of the most important things I've seen, and, since they were really young, we get outside a lot. We go hiking, we play, we run around, we climb on rocks, is I want them to have that experience because I want that for me. That's what keeps me healthy.
Mhm.
So just talking to my daughter this week, she's like, "Hey, this weekend, you think we could go, to this place or this place and, go hiking?" And she was leading that conversation. And it's like it
Amazing.
made me land in my body of, oh, thank goodness, because we've done that enough. It's built into the system. And so for some people that's kind of new because their parents or their community is not doing that. So
Mhm.
I'm always encouraging people, like, find communities that do align with more of that health and vitality of go for a hike, run, walk, whatever, just go sit by the water. Nature holds so many keys and tools, and I think is becoming more valuable with the increase of AI and, technology and all these things that'll keep us remembering. It's going to keep us connected. It's going to keep our bodies healthy and our minds because technology, I don't think, has all the tools and all the keys for us on that front. And so I do want to create things for kids moving forward. I've treated thousands of kids over the years, young, toddlers, kids, teens of all ages, that I can see the need for this. And, even working with men more and seeing the need in the population of men where they're not really getting nourished in the way that they need as well for themselves because they've
Mhm.
never been taught to. They're taught to do all the other things and, focus on anything but that, and also avoiding the feelings because it's uncomfortable and painful, and it's just
Mhm.
new. It's new in terms of the generation, and so I think even at new human events or in the clinic, what I'm seeing, the ancestral energy of all the unfelt material is coming up, and
Oof.
especially a lot of people that are growth mindset, done a lot of work. Thank you, all of you out there that are doing a lot of work on yourselves. Thank you. It
Good work,
changes
guys. Keep going.
that when the body comes into these good states where you've made some progress, you're coming into a new place of stability with some emotional intelligence, and you've liberated your body more, feeling good. That's often actually when some of the ancestral baggage starts
Mhm.
showing up. And like, I was doing so good. I'm like, precisely because you were doing good, feeling clear, grounded, safe. You've made all this progress. Of course, that really deep seated material is now going to come to the surface because it can, because you're ready. And so even you being at the event and having shifts and feeling your spleen and creating the health shifts for yourself through lots of different mechanisms, even outside of me, it's because you've set that up for yourself by staying with it. And then you put yourself in a place to have more breakthroughs, to bring those things to the surface that maybe you couldn't before because you're in survival or in pain or whatever it was. Like we all have these seasons in our life where we're not going to be able to access the deep stuff because we just got to get through this
Mhm.
moment. But when you do, what an opportunity to then have all these other things start to move through. And then you see it collectively. We're coming to a state and a frequency where a lot of things need to be revealed, to be integrated, to be felt, to be acknowledged, and then, an opportunity for different choices.
What comes to mind when you speak into that is the power of authenticity. Is so much of what we've lived up until now that our parents lived was this identity creation, the mass creation, the separation from the coherence of the I am that we are, what breathes us, what lives us. Let's refer to it as coherence at the moment, basically coming to that 0 point, that center place where all things are born from. That inauthentic self, the false self that becomes uh, created between the ages of 0 and 10, formed through some sort of, trauma or separation consciousness, coming away from that, remembrance that we are all one and that we're all in this together. And we set up this separation. where it's us against them. And rather than being in cooperation and collaboration, we come into a competition. And where I'm really seeing this shift is with the what we call, right now, and because of the new human event, something we started talking about going the new entrepreneur. What is the new entrepreneur doing that's so different? How are they living? How are they thinking? How are they speaking? Because the entrepreneurs right now choosing to boldly feel discomfort. I can certainly speak for myself. I'm uncomfortable most of the time. Like, and I've put myself into a position of riding that edge of challenging myself to grow every single day, and it is very uncomfortable. But because of my children and because of what I am passionately inspired to create for them, it's the build, and it's not just, pie in the sky manifestation. We're going to talk about it and think about it. It requires doing it, requires action, requires doing it now. And here so much of ThriveCast is for builders by builders, and what I'm seeing right now is the entrepreneurs are the ones that are changing the world. And part of it is because they're the ones crazy enough to think they can, because they've got that skin in the game. And when I look
Mhm.
at what you're doing, you're building fiercely. You're out there and you're doing it. And what I love is that you're doing it now. You're not like future casting. You're building right now, and you're adaptive and you're resilient to the environment you find yourself in. I would love for you to speak into Dr. Kevin about how you're meeting this time with this mindset and the changes you've had to make and that you've seen others have to make in order to keep this impact sustainable.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great thoughts. I do think, and I was speaking in different corporate environments last year, and
Mhm,
that was exactly what I was thinking is entrepreneurs are the ones that are going to change the world,
mhm, mhm,
because it takes drive, it takes ambition, it takes creativity, it takes, the ability to think and have a different perspective and to see through a different lens. And it often involves taking some risk. And generally
mhm,
speaking, nothing changes in a really big way without some level of risk. If you think of, falling in love with somebody, you have to risk your heart. If you're really going to be in it at a deep level, there's a chance it might not work. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we're always taking a chance that it might not work, but we're also taking a chance that it might. And that's often enough that keeps a lot of us driving forward and innovating. And, what if it does work though? And there's something I think inherently in the DNA of an entrepreneur that's like, you know what, I'm going to try anyway. And if it doesn't work in the way that I envision, then I guess I'll find another pathway. But
mhm,
that tenacity and the perseverance, I think, is what's required across the board of humanity, because the acceptance that things are going to be uncomfortable at times, if we can just even come to terms with that, it's going to change the nature of how we take steps forward. And so, having worked with entrepreneurs and also having been an entrepreneur for most of my, practicing life, and even before I got into Chinese medicine, I had a contracting company doing, framing and log building and these other things. It seemed like I was always wanting to do my own thing and to not be limited, but also to be able to create and take a vision forward. So I think for any entrepreneurs listening, and especially in the health and wellness sector, it's not easy necessarily to really bring a vision forward, but to trust the intuition. And I think this is where we're
mhm,
going in business. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, is we're now getting to access information and data, not just from the mind, but from the field of energy around us, to guide us and have us be, pulled in different directions of where you feel inspired, and like trusting those nudges and trusting, oh, I should reach out to that person.
mhm,
And that's where the new human was born. Was I wanted to do something in community locally, and I had done a couple events, like just one day events, and they went well and people were connecting, and it was like 100 people or something. And I got to learn and I got to say, hey, do I like this? Does this light me up? And I kept feeling that pull, there's more for you here. And in meditation or walking in the forest, like, what does that mean? I'm listening. And then I started seeing visions of a lot more people, and, oh, well, let's do 2 days. If we had big transformation in one day, what would 2 days do? And then as I was moving through that, I thought, well, I need to name this something. I got to call it something. And as often happens for me, being in the forest, being active, whatever it might be in nature, is usually where I get most of my downloads. And it came in, and it was just like that, the new human. And I admittedly didn't love the name to start with. My mind's like, I don't know. But it didn't go away. And after a few weeks, I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to call that. What does that mean? And I never planned on doing more than one event with that, but it was clear with the energy deepening. And then, because that was, we've done 4 now, and we'll do the 5th one this year, that this energy, just by trusting those little steps at a time without seeing the bigger picture, I can now see the depth and the wisdom in it that was, being brought to me. And then my choice is, do I want to action that or not? Do I feel inspired enough? And does that match with my skill sets maybe, or the things that really inspire me or keep my heart excited? Yeah, let's go in that direction without any, guarantees of success, but let's see what happens. Let's see if we just are curious and open to trust that vision. Let's do it. And so any other things that I'm creating right now, I'm usually just sitting back a little bit. I'm listening. I'm waiting to feel the insight, the download, whatever that is that's dropping in. And then I can usually feel and just learn from my own system when there's enough energy to it of, oh yeah, I think this is actually something I am going to enact. I am going to work on pulling this into form. I'm going to bring it into matter. And then I may need to pivot and shift. And I think for everybody right now, there's been so many pivots the last few years that you're probably not in entrepreneurship if you haven't pivoted like 50 times. Like
So
the
true.
changing waves on the ocean. But what I would come back to is when I was in Sedona in 2018, I was in a men's retreat there. On the wall at this beautiful place called Angel Valley, it said, follow your heart's highest excitement. And it's like it put it into my body. It was the thing I needed to hear exactly at that time. And it's never left me. And so if I feel my heart excitement for a project or a mission or what I'm envisioning, there's a good chance I'm going to start actioning in that direction. And I may need to pivot. I may need to, it may not always look like the way it initially dropped in, but that's my navigational beacon now is this exciting for my
Mm,
heart? Not from like a selfish point of view or because I need to make some money in one of those things, but I trust inherently the wisdom of my heart now. It knows. And all of that will be looked after. If as long as I listen to that and trust that, then it's good to go. And is there a lot of steps and actions that need to be taken to enact these visions? Yeah. But what else am I going to do? The time's going to pass anyway. I might as well follow that
right.
excitement that's moving through my body and then see what happens. And it turns out it's usually accurate.
So
It brings.
what happens when you don't listen to your intuition? Are you noticing an immediate spanking? Like, for me, I'm noticing that the time between, it used to be longer. And so sometimes you would miss the repercussion of a decision or not listening. But now I find if I don't listen, and I dishonor that inner knowing and that inner compass, man, the spanking is legit. It is, and it's almost immediate. That time is shortening. Do you know what I mean?
I
The
do.
cosmic two
Yeah,
by
glad
four
I'm not
just
the only one.
right.
I do think that's like the evolution, the wave, the shift in the planet, that things have a faster loop. And I've definitely noticed if I haven't listened to this nudge or this, it'll usually, come up in my face pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And if I didn't trust that or take that step, and sometimes where I've taken a step, but the guidance was to not, then I'll usually have that come back really, really quickly. And so we're getting, I think, a more instantaneous feedback loop, which is supportive to the evolution of humanity. Because if you take a thought, an action, whatever it might be, that's not in alignment with that inherent guidance that's within all of us. And then, like you said, like maybe it's a 2-year track or a 10-year, it's hard to necessarily link it back to that moment of, oh, that's what that was. But if we have a faster feedback loop, we get instant evolution. We get instant understanding or nearly instant. Oh, that was the key. I missed that opportunity, or I took that and I didn't actually feel authentically aligned with it. And then, we lose some money or we have discord in a relationship or connection that we kind of feel like, oh, I knew better, but I didn't trust. Then the next opportunity, you'll do it differently for sure. And so I think this is the rapid curve that a lot of us can choose to be on, is to slow down enough to pay attention to when that loop's coming right back around, and
Hmm.
then adjust course accordingly. Take that wisdom and then you can apply it immediately. You don't have to wait as long. I definitely have been noticing that. So it's fast, which
Hmm.
is sometimes a little bit shocking or catching us off guard, but what a beautiful way to learn and grow in a really efficient manner. And I think that's what
Mhm.
the planet, the universe, our own energy collectively as humans, that's what's it inviting, or that's the invitation right now is, hey, you guys need to get on this pretty quick. So we're gonna accelerate this a little bit so some of you can actually see this in real time, and then move from that clarity, move from that inner authority, and then things open in beautiful ways.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kevin. That's so well said. Are you and your homies having a reunion this fall? Are we gonna see the usual suspects? Can you tell us? Can we get any sort of little like juicy drops?
Ooh, what can I
Ooh.
share? I've got a few meetings coming up. I've got a couple speakers lined up, and I can't share just yet, but I will say if you look at my face right now, if you're watching this visually, you could probably hear it or feel it in my energy. I'm very excited. And it's so hard not to share, but trust me when I say we're gonna create a space that'll take people maybe deeper than they've gone before, but also supported in that way and really cocooned that
Mm,
allows the most amount of transformation with grace. And so we're creating beautiful experiences. You know, if anybody's been to a few of my events, they know that we do it different every time. We have different speakers every time. Sometimes we have return people. And I am trusting the excitement in my heart around the people that are coming, even if people are coming back, that I'm trusting that that is exactly the guidance to follow. And then there'll be a bit of new elements in this event as well. And so again, I'm not at the point where I can share these things yet, but probably, yeah, in the springtime a little bit more as we move into April, there'll be more information coming and things that we're going to be able to start sharing. And mark your calendar, October 2nd to 4th this year, because yeah, we've got plans. I've been getting lots of wisdom and guidance, and I think it's going to be really timely because with some of the prophecies we talked about, 2027, the solar plexus mutation of humanity, and also many indigenous cultures have prophesized about this time, you know, the ending of cycles and the ending of the karmic wheel and coming in at new layers and new frequencies and everything else. Who knows what that's going to mean to be actually human on this planet right now, but we're all going to find out. And so we might as well get together, support each other in whatever it is that's emerging and coming forward, because I believe that's what's going to help us the most is, you know, being in that together, being in it at the same level, all of us humans sharing our hearts. And I think that's what to me the new human is just giving ourselves permission to feel and be human. Even in the grittiness and the rawness and the messiness of it, we do not have to be perfect. But that's what's going to actually shape, I think, the next few years and the next decade or two as humans is we're going to get brought back to that authentic connection, the realness, those like tangible
mhm,
things, being able to put a hand on a shoulder, say, yeah, I feel what you're feeling.
mhm,
And it's so simple. And that's where some of the most profound miracles and breakthroughs happen. So
mhm.
hopefully that's enough juice for you in the moment. But I often weave frequency
So
in
good.
music, sound, experiences that are visceral, that get into the body, that we don't just talk about things, but we're going to do them. And then we get to live it together.
Yeah, there's so much we could talk about, and I know it's not all gonna be the same, but Melan, and what was her counterpart's name? I apologize, I've forgotten his name.
Yeah. Ali Prevez.
Ali, right, I those 2 just mind-blowing. Her voice sounds like it descended straight from the heavens. I mean, his 2 extraordinary, both of them together, just in a room with that many people and the frequency, and I mean, just my whole body was just electric with just
Mhm.
prana and life force. It was next level. So thank you. That was beautiful. That was enough of a drop to just, leave a little cliffhanger for everybody. So, the one thing I want to share, I don't think I've shared this with you yet, but Dr. Zach Bush, we spoke with him, after one of the really particularly transformative sessions. And he was really, moving. He was right there with everybody, and again, as a leader of the space in health and wellness and so many beautiful things Dr. Zach Bush is doing, he came also with such humility. And he shared that he's also been, it's been a very lonely journey and that he kind of gave up on humanity at one point. He thought, that's it, we're done. thrown in the towel. And now he's back with a vengeance, almost stronger than ever. Like he had to sort of accept defeat and then be transformed and rebirthed in that process. He did say to us that, I've had this huge Phoenix process. And he did go on to share, he said, this location, he said, I've traveled all over the world. He said, this location is the most powerful place on the planet, save for one other place he mentioned in South Africa. And because I live here, I take it for granted. I know it's special, but I said to him, I said, really? Like, you really mean that? He said, oh yeah, no. He's like, I don't know what's going on here, but this is a power spot, And so the fact that you and I, we live here, both of us born in Alberta, in Red Deer, and then ending up here, this area attracts so many incredible healers, so many incredible luminaries, change makers. And so the fact that we're able to experience the New Human event here in our own backyard, I feel so absolutely blessed. And to have Zach say that this is the bomb schnizzle, Jay, like this is, I thought, it's just so incredible. I mean, it's a big planet.
It is a big planet. And yeah, him and I've had lots of conversations, certainly about land and geography and energy. And I also feel incredibly grateful and appreciative that this is where I get to call home. Excuse me. This is where I get to call home. And I feel it. And there's a reason it's coming through to be here. Because a lot of people have asked me, hey, why not this big city or that place or whatever? And it's because I don't feel that connection in that same way, that there is profound and beautiful and potent energy here, but it's still grounded and soft enough to really connect with and work with, but it'll move things. And yeah, to hear Zach say that, because obviously he's traveled all over the world many times over and been in many places and spaces, that there is something really special here. And so I can't wait to see where it continues. And, we might take the New Human International as time goes by. I've been asked that a lot the last year or two. But I also think this space is where it's kind of been birthed from. And there's a reason for that. And I'm going to continue to trust that. So yeah, very exciting.
The land is evolving with us, and the land is supportive. And, I don't think that there's any coincidences. A good friend of mine just said, Christoph Melchizedek, who's on the ThriveCast as well. He said Einstein, and it didn't sound like something Einstein would say, but he said that coincidences are God staying anonymous, God choosing to be anonymous. So it's no coincidence that this is where New Human is and the power place that we live in and have the privilege to call home. I want to just shift, Dr. Kevin, into the masculine. I grew up with a father who was a professional athlete. He was a pro football player. He was a crazy Norwegian Olympic ski jumping champion, ski jumping like the big, yeah. And I grew up, he was in business. He owned a ski shop. He was a wholesaler. He was a distributor. And so I grew up with this crazy Norwegian dad who had, Russian stallions and racehorses. And I grew up without a TV. And I was really fortunate to have a crazy dad. And my mom, also an entrepreneur, publishing business, owned a newspaper. And so like you, I grew up as an entrepreneur, and that was all I ever knew. My father was very masculine in his own right, obviously, as a professional athlete. I grew up as a professional skier. The magnificence of the blessing that I have, and my dad's now passed. And so I'm always keen to pay homage to Papa Gordland. He was a legend, and I miss him dearly, but I have so much peace because we were the best of friends. We traveled the world together. We went to the Himalayas together. We lived in Mexico when my kids were little. He was like the consummate adventurer, and he was such a man's man. He had a lot of friends, and men really respected him. And yet he would pray with me every night, right? We would say the most beautiful prayers every night, and he would cry. He would cry a lot. He would show me his feelings, his emotions. And I didn't realize how unusual that was at the time. But now I can see that my father had this beautiful balance between the masculine and the feminine. And it's quite rare, actually. And this is something that I see in you. I see this extraordinary man who loves his family, who's a dad committed to, supporting his children to have the best future and the best life they can. Your heart is so big, you love so big, and you're just, alive with this presence. And looking at a man like you and then the work you're doing, I see your softness, your gentleness, your willingness to be wrong, to be vulnerable, to, have a good cry every once in a while. And I see that so many men have not been afforded that, the thinking that they can even cry or let go or feel or move emotions is part of that false identity that we've talked about, where it's like, well, men can't do that. And part of your invitation, whether you don't speak into it that often, but your presence alone is that invitation. That invitation for what's possible for men right now as we move into this new era. I would love for you to speak into a little bit about what was spoken at the last event at Interstellar, about the roles of the masculine and the feminine now, and how that's evolving and how that's changing. It really impacted me. It gave me a permission at a level that's really difficult to explain in words. But when I heard you and your comrades speaking about the masculine and the feminine, I felt a sense of deep truth. The programs run so deep and are so old. I would love for you to share how you feel about that and where that piece of New Human is coming from.
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you for sharing about your dad and
Mhm.
his impact. And yeah, I feel just really honored for those beautiful reflections. And it brought up some emotion in me of the journey of being a human, being a man, in this era is really interesting. And anybody really from all walks of life, there's
Mhm.
intensity, chaos, and lots of opportunity to choose our own path. And there's been a lot of confusion, and I have definitely felt that. Is what does it mean? And
Mhm.
what is masculine and what is feminine? And I almost think where we're going is probably even moving beyond distilling it into those words of what is the authentic blueprint of each of us, and how does that want to express in the most healthy, beautiful, gifted way. And maybe in the traditional sense, it looks more masculine or it looks more feminine. But when I think of nature, there's this harmonious, orchestrated ecosystem that has evolved. And I think as we kind of come into our hearts a little bit more, we're not going to be trying to identify so much with the frontal lobe and the mind of what it is or isn't. We're just going to find ourselves being in flow with our organic blueprint, the remembering of here's my soul essence and here's how I'm going to show up and share. And also at the same time, growing up in Alberta, working in oil field, construction, farming, all those different things. And I'm so grateful for that because I think it helped me ground and land in my physical body and learn how to move energy that way and learn how to carry heavy things and really kind of express in a way that built a strong foundation in the bones. And so it's been really helpful now because the confusion, I think, especially in spiritual communities, there are the emotional aspects. A lot of men have thought, well, I can't remain being masculine and feel things. And I think that's been a big point of confusion. And also, it doesn't mean that the feminine can't feel and express in a million different ways, also, that we don't need to be limited by those capacities. And so, this is something I've been observing in the clinic for many years. And for me, I'm still unpacking this. So, I don't think I have any major, monumental conclusions other than when we tap in, we've mentioned authenticity. When we start distilling things down and get into the body and authentically connect with how we want to express as a clear vessel, whatever that expression is, slightly more masculine or feminine or a beautiful balance of both, whatever that is, it'll feel clean and it'll feel like beautiful truth and clarity. And you and I've had it multiple times on this call. I've felt goosebumps moving through my body and energy and emotion. And that's just us showing up being present. And so I do think those layers of understanding ourselves are going to become more clear, where we can be in that heart space, but in a way that is really felt with one another. Like when I speak or when you speak and coming from that deeper place, the frequency is different than if I try and come up with something in my mind. And not that my mind's not supportive. And I think there's also the balance of the heart and the mind that has that masculine feminine dance, because everything in Chinese medicine comes to the yin yang, and there's yang within yin and yin within yang, that they're inseparable. that we can't have one without the other, and they're mutually engendering and they're mutually supportive of one another. And I think this is where there's a lot of discord in our society, is where they've been pitted against each other in times where, oh, it has to be more like this, or it has to be this, or this is toxic, or that's not healthy. And I'm like, no, no. The balance of both of those dancing together is what is going to create beauty and love and connection on the planet, where they can flow in and out. And there's times we need to be more yang. And this goes for women, for men, doesn't really matter. There's times where that feminine energy and presence is going to be the most important and needs to lead and needs to be part of that, responding in the space. And then there's other times where maybe more of the nature of the masculine dynamic needs to lead and be forward, but that may shift one day to the next. That may shift inside each of us and our relationships to be able to have that dynamic force of knowing what's needed. And for men, I'll speak as a man, knowing how to invite the feminine forward to guide and lead, and for us to respond to that beautiful wisdom that's coming through, the intuitive wisdom, and leaning into the strengths of that. We really need that a lot right now on the planet. And then when we're called to serve and provide kind of the framework or the banks of the river, that more penetrative force, even energetically, to really move something forward that is done in a beautiful dance, and that we can create some balance in there, that one is not more valuable than the other, but that they're interrelated and that they can actually support each other in powerful ways. And, couples that I've met, and again, it doesn't matter what your orientation is, it's just the energetics. Nature's trying to find a balance. And I think we're trying to find a balance in our society, and it's messy and it's kind of all over the place because a lot of us are asking these questions of, what does this mean now? We never really considered that. And what is a new or different or healthy expression? And I often come back to health. How is somebody feeling in their body? Do they feel healthy or not? And that can kind of tell you if they're grappling with that dynamic inside. How much are we able to receive? How much are we able to, kind of put forward into the world? And there has to be a balance in that. If we can't receive love, then we're diminishing ourselves. And also, if we're giving, too much without nourishing our bodies, then that leads to an imbalance as well. And so as we come to the deeper places here, only you'll know, like, that true form inside yourself and what feels like that truest balance, and then being able to express that, and you'll be able to know, because you'll feel good. You'll feel that truth. It has a frequency.
So we spoke earlier about this concept of evolutionary tension. You've probably had moments where you're like, I think I landed on the wrong planet. I'm not sure how many of you listening to this have had that moment. I think pretty much all of us at some point have been like, yeah, pretty sure landed on the wrong one, because to be human on this planet is pretty extreme. Some refer to it as the Earth School, and that we come here to experience such an incredible forgetting. And then we spend the majority of our life remembering how powerful we are and who we are. And yet we land in this density, this planet that is so polar to what our actual innate beingness is, this infinite being that we are, that's here as a spiritual being having a human experience as opposed to humans having a spiritual experience. And some people refer to it as Satan's planet. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but that we've landed in a realm where the darkness that we spoke of earlier is really in our faces right now. And I just want to loop back on that, because I think for people to really integrate this experience that we have of coming into a world where there's so much shadow, and this concept of the illumination of the shadow, and us bringing light to it. Like, the room's always been dirty, but we're shining light on it now, and we're looking around and going, oh my God, there's just, it's always been there. How much of what we're experiencing right now do you feel is actually humanity's own creation? Or do you feel like it's just inherent in the realm that we find ourselves in? The more evolution, the greater the perception, that we become multidimensional beings capable of perceiving things from multiple different angles. And how we choose to look at things. If I wake up on a bad day, my perception is very different than if I wake up on a good day. And as I, become more coherent, my perception allows me to see what's happening on the planet in a totally different way. And yet when I speak from that place, sometimes I feel like it can disconnect me from the actual humanity that is so real for so many, which is, a lot of people are just having a hard time putting food on the table. So many
Mhm.
people are struggling at such a deep level that to connect with some of these loftier ideals that we're speaking about, which are also true, but to stay human and to be fully human is to not forget about the people that actually right now are really struggling and really in that survival state. And that the environment that we find ourselves on the planet is pushing us into the state, not the least of which is inflation, the cost of living, the poisoning in our food, the poisoning in our water. And in me, the inner mama bear in me is the damn fiercest bear in the forest. I mean, I get afraid of that mother bear. Like genuinely, I'm that power that I have within me. And at the New Human event, I was given permission to be that. And that protective layer that I feel, that fierceness is don't be afraid of it, that it's purposeful. And it's really strong right now in a lot of us. We're feeling really, really ignited from within to protect our children,
Yeah.
right? The greatest gift, resource, love. If we can't protect our children, then who are we?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of energy moving through my body on that one too. I wonder, when I feel into this, the amount of grief that I'm able to allow to be felt in my body also seems to be equal to the amount of love that I can feel in my body. And I don't know if that's the divine orchestrated balance or what that is, that there is pain here. There is massive challenges and atrocities. And I honestly don't understand why that is. But through my own lived experience, through my felt sense of what's alive in my body, the more I've allowed myself to just feel whatever is there, the anger, the rage, the injustice, that it does usually break through. And then I can feel more bliss and have these moments of like pure joy and ecstasy of just being alive, that I'm even here in whatever the experience might be. And that there's like beauty. It sounds kind of messed up to say it, right? And I've heard other people say this, so it's not, I'm not trying to repeat it. It's just this is what I feel in my system, is that like there's still beauty in the pain. And after a storm, it's usually like the freshest air and the earned wisdom that whenever my time is up here in this physical form, I want to be satisfied with my effort. I want to be satisfied with that I left it on the table, that I didn't shy away from a challenge, or that I didn't shy away from sharing how I felt, or that I didn't bypass all those feelings that were in me for so many years. And I think that's also what's allowed me to step into, the space and time that I'm in now, and creating more, and still having fears, still having lots of doubts, still having lots of insecurities and feeling inadequate plenty of the minutes of the day, but also knowing that's going to be a part of my experience. And that if I'm met with, loss or grief and those things, to allow it to be felt in as much entirety as I can at each day, at each step, because that is also going to allow me to see beauty and feel that amazing love that I believe was part of this creation too. That the extremes, can't be all light or all dark, because I
Mhm.
don't think that would create any polarity or any like that healthy sort of chemistry that exists, where that fire, and I love feeling the fire in my body and in other people's systems. Like we need that. We're in a fire element year from a Chinese astrology point of view. And fire can transform and alchemize and burn, but it can also clear the slate, and it can also move. And there's a lot of yang in it. And so I feel like a lot of movement's going to happen in humanity this year, even if it's painful, even if it's filled with challenge, that energy is going to grow and move anyway. That might be beyond all of us as individuals, but we get to choose how we feel, despite sometimes feeling like we have no control over that.
Mhm.
That we're here to live and experience something really fully.
Mhm.
And that, brings all manner of things forth. And, I guess that's what we're here for. And, I think a lot of us, and I appreciate your courage and just being able to share and speak to these things and all the things I've come to know about you as well, of just creating, putting that out there and showing up again and again and again. And the perseverance to really like squeeze the most out of life too, and give the most into it. And I also think that's the balance of the masculine and feminine, is that we get to support each other in those times, in those dynamic places of let's up level the whole frequency through each other and for each other. And we might as well do our best while we're here. Wherever we get to on completion this time around, is I want to see a lot of progress.
Mm.
I want to see that I moved the mark in some way, and that I really went for it. And so in humanity, it's like let's go for it. What if it was successful? What if it worked to create something profoundly beautiful, even more than what we're experiencing now? And we got to go through it.
Dare to thrive.
Yeah.
We're in the year of the fire horse. I'd love for you to put into context, coming full circle to Chinese medicine, which I've also studied. That's a big part of my path, and I have a deep respect for the ancient wisdom and knowledge, and the seasons and the cycles, the seeing of the patterns, and the constant movement and evolution through the biology, as we can look at it, also through the calendar, as you mentioned, and riding those seasons, honoring those seasons, and being aware of them, because it's inherent in that is, not just the map, but knowing where you are on the map. And I love that about Chinese medicine. Please speak into that piece as it connects to where we are now, and moving into what you earlier spoke of about 2027 and this great change that is upon us.
I'd love to even speak about horses for a moment. And,
Yeah.
I grew up on a farm, and there was access. Neighbors had horses, and we had like a little pony for a while, and then a bigger horse, and she had a foal. And I just love being around animals. And I spent some time around horses this weekend and this past weekend, because I was really thinking, here we are, fire horse, Chinese medicine. The fire element in Chinese medicine is the heart. That is the connection.
Mm.
So I also feel it's very poetically beautiful that this year is about the heart energy, just elementally speaking. And then if we bring the horse into that, like physical horses, they have a huge heart, and they have a big heart field. This has been studied. A lot of people know a lot about this. When you're around horses in the right, setting, in the right time and space, their coherence of their hearts will really, really help our physiology and our nervous systems come into more balance. And again, not all horses are perfectly balanced either, but there is that sense of that inherent wisdom through the animal kingdom, that there's so
Mhm.
much there to be learned, even without words. The other thing I've noticed about horses, and it's so associated with energy and freedom and liberation. And a lot of us, I think, have images of horses just like running, like that ecstatic energy of fire, of just going for it. And I feel that too. And I think this year is going to be a lot about that. But a lot of the other times you see horses, they're standing still. They're very calm, very present. They're not running all the time. Like, they're not in fire, in yang all the time, because they would burn out and die too.
Mhm.
So I think the first, connection we have is, with the fire horse, is all of those images, which is beautiful. And we got to run with that. When you feel like you need to run, like, really go for it. But also remember, horses rest too. They look after each other, in a herd. They have, taking turns watching out for each other to look for predators, and to really, foster that community of connection, so that when one wants to lay down, they can lay down safely and rest. And then maybe it's another turn, and it's another turn. And so we can take turns leading and guiding and resting. And I think these are the things that are going to be really important to remember this year as we traverse into 2027. Remember the rest. Don't be all yang, all fire all the time, or you'll get burned. You'll burn yourself out, and you'll have nothing left for what needs to be prepared for 2027, and for the years after that, of whatever that's going to look like, because we don't really know. But what we know, at least we can use that inherent wisdom of what would the ancient sages in Chinese medicine say. It'd be mind the kidneys, mind the balance, mind the elements, live in harmony with nature. Don't force things. follow that natural flow. When there's more light, summertime, yeah, be outside more, be awake more, use that energy. In the wintertime, rest more, hibernate more. And we've gotten so out of balance, I think, to override all these natural layers of wisdom that are all around us, that we need to remember that with the age of technology and AI and everything else, it'd be really easy to be in full yang, and AI is in full yang right now,
Mm-hmm.
growing so fast, so rapidly. It's hard to keep up. And eventually that balance has to have some yin in it too, or it'll burn itself out completely. And I do think a lot of people are already burnt out with technology. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to screen anymore, or not as much. We did that through COVID. It was a lot. A lot of people just want to go back to the forest and homesteading and being with animals and sheep and, chickens and all the rest. And I'm like, I get it. Cabin in the woods in the middle of nowhere sounds amazing. So for each of us, the invitation this year, I think, is find that fire, use it mindfully, let it guide and move you and transform. And sometimes we need to burn some things down in a mindful way to cleanse the field of what doesn't serve anymore. It's like, let's burn up that shadow field of energy to bring more light, because fire brings light and it brings warmth. But
Mm-hmm.
also, if you're standing in the fire too close to the fire, at times it'll be hot, and there's consequences to that too. So I think the challenge this year will be to rest when there's so much yang energy, to go against the herd and be like, you know what? I'm actually just going to stand still right now. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to slow everything down so that when I do want to run, I know which direction, and I can really, really move a lot of that energy and fire, and it's going to have huge impact. But I can't do that every day. That would be unwise.
Nice.
So from a Chinese medicine point of view and sort of my own lens, I think coloring that in and being around some horses, I was standing with a horse for half an hour straight, and she had her eyes closed and so did I, and none of us moved. And I got the most beautiful energetic healing and transmissions and wisdom that was coming through. Nobody was running around at all. It was kind of the opposite. So I was like, oh yeah, don't forget this ability to come into presence. There's wisdom hidden in all those places if we're willing to just pause. And then when we got to move some energy, we'll be able to move it this year too. So, I think as we transform into 2027, I don't know if there'll be any monumental changes overnight. My sense is maybe it'll unroll or unfold over time, but
Mm-hmm.
that we might feel a lot of energy at times moving through us, inviting us to look at life differently and to look at each other differently. And this is part of what we're going to weave into the new human events is October 2026, several months away from, these big shifts in humanity in 2027. February is kind of more of the date of Gene Key 55's activity, which we just came out of this past week. Gene Key 55 at a higher frequency is freedom. So I believe we're going to have opportunities to free ourselves more. And I also believe that comes from inside. That I had a mentor years ago share, Kevin, you can't chase freedom. You can't try and move towards freedom and get it. It's not a thing to attain in that way. We have to move from freedom. If we're coming from a place and frequency of freedom, it changes everything. And to do that, according to the gene keys anyway, we have to come out of victimization. And so I think this will be a big transformation this year of the choosing. Maybe this is the forking of the species, is choosing victim consciousness or freedom. And that will probably be given many opportunities and have to choose at some point where we're going to go and in what frequency we're going to come from.
Mm. Word. The Gene Key 55 is so potent. I've read it so many times, and depending on the perspective that I have and where I'm at when I read it, it's landing on me completely differently. What today has really been, and I'll be editing this and reviewing it, and it'll, land on me in a different way. And I think you could watch this again, same thing like the Gene Keys. You could watch this 5 or 10 times and it can land on you different ways depending on where you're at. And that's really it, isn't it? Is that life becomes a mirror. And what we're seeing right now and what it's reflecting back to us is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for change. It's a great opportunity to lean in and to be these new humans that we envision. And we're at this precipice where the victimhood that you speak into really, to me, just is a forgetting of how powerful we are, is a forgetting of the deeper layers of what it means to be here and be in a human body, which is the vehicle that we're gifted. And yet we're not this body. This body is just the vehicle. And to come out of that and to step into creation as creator beings and to own that and to remember that means to create our own reality. It means that we are the ones we've been waiting for. And that as
Mhm.
we sit at this precipice, the only limitation that we have is our ability to see what's possible and then to live into it, build it, and create it. So, with all that said, Dr. Kevin Preston, you are just an absolute awesome human. I'm super grateful to call you a friend and a comrade and a neighbor. And of course, I'm absolutely thrilled to participate in the New Human event and to see what unfolds through you as you continue to birth your limitless imagination and inspire through your courage to, I think, let go to the times. And you're not driving the bus. I can see that in you. I can see that you've let go, and you're listening deeply. And so I honor you for that. And thank you so much for taking the time and having the presence here to give what is a real genuine transmission. Your mission that you share so beautifully and clearly is something that lives in you as you, so deep in you, is now through the transmission being shared with the world. And I don't think anyone watching this could ever be the same again. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just feel, yeah, my heart's super full and open, and just really appreciating you and what you're bringing forward, and the space you created here for us to dive in this way. And yeah, that authenticity is not lost and is really felt. And so, yeah, very blessed. Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see you
amazing.
soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you soon. The what just like came in like a lightning rod just now is we have a microphone in front of us. There's so much that could be said. To actually drop out of mind, it can be a really scary thing when you have a platform because you're like, oh, to let go of the filter. It's so easy to have that filter on because we're trained to have a filter because it can be scary to not have a filter. But to actually drop the filter, as you and I really did today, of not needing to control the conversation, but to let go to what wanted to come through both of us, creates a new possibility that neither you and I in our mentation could ever have created. And so when I do that, though, there is this part of me, admittedly, where I'm like, oh, it's you so want to hold on to the wheel and be in control. And I think that the greatest thing I took from this conversation is actually, the deep trust to let go and to know that ultimately we're held and that what's coming through us has way more imagination than we do if we're willing to be in presence with it and allow it to move through us. And so that was, just like so great to feel that presence.
Cool.
I'll leave it at that. May the force be with you, Dr. Kevin, and bless you. And thanks again.
Thank you.